My wife cheated on me with our neighbor, secretly took $250, $0 from our joint account, and now she's claiming she's entitled to half our $1.2 million estate. I feel like I'm losing everything to her lies and betrayal. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where everything I believed about my marriage would come crashing down in such a brutal way. It all started with little things: missed calls, late nights with no explanation, strange bank transactions. You know how it is when you start to suspect something off, but you tell yourself it's just paranoia. But then I found out the truth. She was cheating on me with our neighbor, and she had secretly drained $250, $0 from our joint account. That's not just betrayal, that's a full-blown attack on everything I thought we had. Her name is Lisa. She's a beautiful woman, confident, sharp-tongued, and always had a way of making me feel like I was lucky to have her. We'd been married for 10 years, and I thought we had a solid life. We had a big estate, about $1.2 million in total, and 2 kids we loved more than anything. But from the moment I started noticing her phone ringing at odd hours or her disappearing for hours during the day, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. It all became clear one night when I was working late and decided to check the bank account. I usually don't do that because I trust her, but something made me look this time. And what I saw knocked me flat. The account had been emptied of $250, $0 over the past few months. Withdrawals in cash, transfers to some account I'd never seen before, and a few suspicious charges at fancy restaurants and hotels. I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. She had been secretly taking money from us, and I hadn't noticed until it was too late. I confronted her the next day, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was boiling. I asked her where the money was going, and she looked at me with that innocent, bitchy smirk of hers, like I was the one overreacting. "You're always so paranoid," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's just some business expenses, nothing to worry about." But I knew better. I knew she had been lying. Then I found out she'd been seeing the neighbor, a guy named Mark, for over a year. She had the nerve to deny it at first, said I was imagining things, that I was jealous, that she was just friends with him. But the evidence was too clear. I found texts on her phone, flirty messages, plans to meet up, even pictures of her in bed with him. I saw her leaving their house early in the morning, her hair disheveled, her makeup smudged. The worst part was realizing she had been lying to me all along, pretending everything was fine, while she was sleeping with our neighbor and stealing from us. It was like my whole life was a lie. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. How could she do this? How could she betray me, take my trust, take our savings, and then turn around and act like everything was normal? I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process it all. The woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had been cheating on me and stealing from us. And the worst part, she was now claiming she was entitled to half our estate, about $600, $0, because she said she was entitled to her share. She's saying I'm the one who's wrong, that I don't deserve what's coming to her. That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to plan my revenge, but I didn't know exactly how yet. All I knew was I was furious and hurt, and I was done being the fool in this game. The next few days felt like walking through a fog. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. I kept replaying the moment I found the bank statements, the way her face twisted into that smug smile when she lied about the affair and the money. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about the betrayal. But beneath that, there was a cold, calculated part of me that started to think about how to turn this around. Lisa, of course, was acting like nothing had happened. She went about her day like she owned the place, throwing out little jabs and dismissive comments whenever I confronted her. "You're overreacting," she'd say. "You're just jealous. You think I'm cheating, please." She even had the nerve to accuse me of being paranoid, like I was the one losing my mind. But I wasn't going to let her keep gaslighting me. I knew the truth and I had the evidence. Now I just needed a plan. I decided to dig deeper. I hired a private investigator to follow her and gather proof of her affair with Mark. It took a few days, but eventually I had clear footage of her sneaking out of the neighbor's house early in the morning, her lipstick smudged, her hair messy. It was like a punch in the stomach every time I watched the videos. She was lying to my face and I had the proof. The Pi also found out that she'd been transferring money to accounts in her name, more than I initially saw, and funneling cash into overseas accounts, probably to hide it all from me. Meanwhile, I was also tracking the bank accounts myself. I discovered she'd been withdrawing money in cash, then depositing it into her secret accounts. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. She thought she was so clever, but she underestimated how much I was willing to dig. I found out she'd secretly taken out loans against the estate, trying to cover her tracks. Every new piece of evidence just fueled my anger and my resolve. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night, staring at the pile of documents and footage, feeling like I was losing my mind. I had loved Lisa for so long, trusted her with everything. And now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and a cheat. I felt betrayed beyond words, but also oddly relieved. At least now I knew the truth. I wasn't crazy. She was the one who'd betrayed us all. The next step was confronting her again, but this time with the full weight of proof in my hands. I knew I needed to be careful. She was manipulative, used to controlling every situation. I started drafting a plan to expose her, to make her face the consequences of her actions. I wasn't just thinking about divorce. I was thinking about how to take back what was mine, how to protect my kids, and how to make sure she didn't walk away with a dime of our estate. I also started consulting a lawyer. I wanted to understand my rights, especially about the estate, and how to handle her claims that she was entitled to half of everything. I knew she'd try to spin this into a story where she was the victim, that she deserved her cut because she'd sacrificed for the marriage. That was her usual tactic: lie, manipulate, and twist everything to her favor. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine, even if it meant war. In the meantime, she kept up her act, pretending everything was fine. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of trying to control her, say I was paranoid, but I didn't care anymore. I was done trusting her. Every moment I spent with her now just confirmed her true nature. I had to act fast, gather everything I needed, and prepare for the inevitable confrontation. I knew she'd try to spin it so it looked like I was the one at fault, but I had the evidence, and I was determined to make her face the music. I'd be damned if she walked away with a single cent more than she deserved, because she didn't deserve anything after what she'd done. Not her lies, not her cheating, not the stolen money, and definitely not the estate she was claiming. I was going to take everything back, piece by piece, and make her regret ever crossing me. The day I finally decided to confront her with everything was the day I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I'd spent so much time gathering proof, videos, bank statements, witness accounts from the Pi, that I knew I had her cornered. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might spin it all around, turn the tables, and make me look like the bad guy. But I was done playing nice. I wanted her to see the extent of what she'd done. I called her into the living room, kept my voice calm but firm. "Lisa, we need to talk," I said. She looked at me with that snarky smile, acting like she had no idea what was coming. I laid out the evidence, showed her the videos of her sneaking out, the bank statements with the $250, $0 withdrawals, the overseas transfers, the secret loans. I watched her face drain of color as she realized I wasn't bluffing. "You've been lying to me all along," I said. "You've been cheating, stealing from us, and now you think you're entitled to half the estate after everything you've done. That's not how this works." She tried to deny everything, of course, said I was jealous, paranoid, that I was making it all up, but I cut her off. "I have the proof, every single thing. You think you're clever, hiding money, sleeping around, but I've got you cornered." Her reaction was classic Lisa. She started crying, fake tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "I was just stressed. Mark makes me feel alive again. I never meant to hurt you. It's not about the money, it's about feeling appreciated." That was her favorite line: blame everyone else, make herself the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her she was a liar, a thief, and that I was done being played for a fool. She kept insisting she was entitled to her share of the estate because she'd sacrificed so much, raising the kids, putting up with my flaws. She claimed she deserved half because she was entitled, and if I tried to take anything away from her, I'd be the one in the wrong. That's when I snapped. I told her she had no right to everything, especially after everything she'd done. I made it clear I was filing for divorce and that she wouldn't get a penny of what she was claiming unless she faced the consequences of her actions. The confrontation turned heated. She yelled, called me controlling, insecure, and said I was the one who'd ruined the marriage. But I'd had enough. I stood my ground, told her I was done with her lies and that I'd be going to court to settle everything legally. I also warned her that I'd be exposing her to the authorities if she didn't return the stolen money. I knew she was trying to manipulate me still, but I was too far gone for that. I wanted her out of my life, out of my house, and out of my financial future. That night, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been for so long, trusting her blindly, thinking she was my partner, but she'd been planning her escape, her betrayal, for months. I realized I'd been a fool to think she loved me the way I loved her. Now I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a thief, and a user. Still, I also felt a flicker of hope. I was finally taking control, taking back what was mine, and starting the process of rebuilding my life without her. The worst part was knowing she wouldn't go down without a fight. She'd already started spinning her web of lies, trying to make me look like the villain. I knew she'd try to turn the kids against me, paint herself as the victim, and claim I was the one causing all the chaos. But I also knew I had the truth on my side, and I was finally ready to stand up for myself, no matter how ugly things would get. I spent the rest of that night drafting everything: legal documents, a timeline of her lies, a list of all the stolen money. I knew I had to be strategic. I wasn't just fighting for the money or the estate. I was fighting to protect my dignity and my future. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd stolen, and I wasn't going to be the one to lose everything I'd worked so hard for. From this point on, it was all about justice, even if it meant burning bridges I'd once thought unbreakable. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I met with my lawyer, went over every detail, and prepared for the inevitable legal battle. I knew Lisa would fight me tooth and nail, trying to spin her lies and cling to her share of the estate. She was already throwing tantrums, claiming I was trying to ruin her, that I was the one acting out of greed, not her. But I had the evidence, and I was determined to see this through. I also reached out to the bank and the authorities about the stolen money. I wanted to make sure everything was documented, that there was a paper trail. I didn't want her to get away with a dime of our estate after everything she'd done. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. She'd been sneaking around, lying, manipulating, and stealing. She'd even tried to forge documents to claim she was entitled to more. But I had proof of all her lies, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. Meanwhile, Lisa was trying to play the victim. She'd burst into tears during her fake crying sessions, claiming I was destroying her life, that I was accusing her of things she didn't do, all while spinning stories to the kids, telling them I was controlling and paranoid. I knew she'd try to turn everyone against me, but I refused to give her that satisfaction. I kept everything focused on the facts, on the evidence I had collected. One day, she even tried to seduce me back, saying she was sorry, that she loved me and the kids, that she'd changed. It was classic her, playing the emotional card, trying to manipulate me into dropping everything. But I wasn't falling for it. I told her she had already betrayed us all, that I wasn't going to just forget everything she'd done. That her tears and apologies didn't erase the fact that she'd lied, cheated, and stole from us. The legal process was brutal. I filed for divorce, and my lawyer started the proceedings to freeze her assets, including her claim to the estate. I also demanded an audit of all her financial transactions, every withdrawal, transfer, and loan. I wanted to make sure nothing was left hidden. It was a long, exhausting process, but I knew it was necessary. I couldn't let her walk away with a single dollar more than she deserved, especially after all she'd done. Throughout it all, I felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and relief. Anger at her betrayal, sadness for what we'd lost, and relief that I was finally taking control. I'd spent years building this life, working hard, saving, investing, and now I was fighting to protect what was left. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She'd fight dirty, I was sure of that, but I also knew I had the truth on my side. The hardest part was facing the reality that everything I believed in our marriage, our future, had been a lie. I'd trusted her with my heart, my money, my life. And she'd used that trust to cheat, steal, and manipulate. Still, I refused to let her win. I had to stay strong for myself, for the kids, for what little dignity I had left. One night I sat alone in the house, looking at the empty space where she used to sit. I thought about all the memories, the promises we'd made, and how she'd shattered all of that in a matter of months. I wondered if I'd ever fully recover from this, or if I'd spend the rest of my life haunted by her betrayal. But deep down, I knew one thing: I was done being the victim. From now on, I was going to fight for my future, no matter what it took, because I deserved better than her lies, her cheating, and her theft. And someday, I hoped I'd find a way to move on and rebuild what she tried to destroy. The legal battles dragged on longer than I expected. Every week felt like a new assault, another document to sign, another deposition, another attempt by Lisa to spin her lies. She was relentless, claiming I was controlling and abusive, even trying to paint herself as the innocent victim who was just trying to find happiness. It was nauseating how she twisted everything, but I stayed focused on the facts. I had the evidence, and I knew she was going to try every dirty trick in the book to get her way. One day, she went so far as to file a counterclaim, asserting she was entitled to half of the estate because we'd been married for 10 years and because she'd contributed to the marriage in her own way. She even claimed that I'd been emotionally abusive, which was laughable. I knew her tactics. She was trying to distract, to guilt trip, and to manipulate her way into a better position. But I wasn't falling for it. I had my lawyer prepare a strong response, showing all her lies, her financial deception, and her affair with Mark. Meanwhile, I was also working on protecting my kids from her manipulations. She was trying to turn them against me, telling them I was the bad guy, that I was trying to control her, that I didn't love them. I kept showing up for them, being present and making sure they saw the truth, that I was fighting to keep our family together and that I loved them unconditionally. It wasn't easy, watching her try to poison their minds, but I stayed calm, patient, and consistent. I knew I had to be the stable parent, no matter what she said. On top of everything, I started to realize how much I'd been emotionally drained. The betrayal, the lies, the theft, it all took a toll. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering how I'd let myself trust her for so long, how I'd been blind to her manipulations. And yet I refused to let her see me break. I stayed strong, kept my focus, and kept pushing forward. Then a turning point came when my lawyer uncovered even more evidence. She'd been transferring money into accounts in her name in multiple countries, trying to hide her tracks. We filed a motion to seize her overseas accounts, and I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew she was losing control. That was the moment I realized I was winning, not just legally but emotionally. I'd taken back the power she'd tried to steal from me. I also started to see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about the money or the house. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. I thought about the years I'd spent building everything, and I knew I deserved better than a wife who had lied, cheated, and stolen from me. I decided I would move on, with or without her, because I couldn't live with the constant betrayal lurking in the background. The final blow came when the court ordered her to return the stolen $250, $0, and to relinquish her claim to half our estate. It was a hard-fought victory, but I felt a heavy weight lift off my shoulders. I knew she'd be furious, but I didn't care anymore. I had done everything I could to protect what was mine, and I'd learned a lot about trust, betrayal, and resilience in the process. Now I'm in the process of rebuilding. I've sold some assets, divided the estate, and started to put my life back together. It's not easy, and I still have moments where I feel angry or sad, but I'm moving forward. I've realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, stronger and more aware than ever. Lisa's betrayal taught me that trust has to be earned, and that no matter how much you love someone, they can still hurt you in ways you never imagined. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and I won't let anyone take away what I've worked so hard for. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Trust your instincts, gather proof if you suspect something, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. Because in the end, the truth has a way of coming out, and when it does, justice will follow. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated her. Lisa was always the type to play the victim, to twist every situation to her advantage. She looked at me with those icy eyes, acting helpless and innocent, while behind the scenes she was orchestrating a web of lies, theft, and betrayal. I was blinded because I loved her, because I trusted her. But that trust was a fragile illusion, shattered by her greed and selfishness. The aftermath has been a rough road, but also a necessary one. I've learned to rebuild my boundaries, to be more cautious about who I let into my life, and most importantly, to trust myself. I've come to understand that sometimes the people you love most can hurt you the deepest, and the only way to survive that pain is to face it head on. I've lost a lot, my marriage, my sense of security, some of my savings, but I've gained clarity and strength I never knew I had. The kids are still adjusting. They're young, and it's hard for them to understand why mommy isn't around anymore or why we had to go through all this turmoil. I've tried to be honest with them, to explain that sometimes adults make mistakes and that it's okay to feel angry or sad. I want them to grow up knowing that betrayal doesn't define you, that you can pick yourself up and move forward even after the worst kind of heartbreak. As for Lisa, I don't know where she is now. She's trying to rebuild her life, no doubt spinning her stories, trying to convince everyone she's the victim. But I don't care anymore. The only thing I care about is protecting myself and my children from her manipulations. I've cut all ties, blocked her from my life, and I refuse to let her poison my mind any longer. This experience has changed me. It's made me more cautious, more resilient, and more aware that love isn't enough if it's not built on honesty and respect. I've learned that money can corrupt even the strongest relationships, and that betrayal often comes from those closest to us. But I've also learned that I'm capable of surviving the worst, that I can stand tall after being knocked down, and that sometimes the greatest act of strength is knowing when to walk away. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Gather your evidence. Don't be afraid to fight for what's right, because if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. And in the end, the truth will always come out. It's hard, it's painful, but it's worth it. Because only when you face the darkness head on can you truly find the light on the other side.